How we doing, NFL fans? Just over 60 days until kickoff. That's just under 2 months. Still a long time. I just really want football back. It's been a really long offseason, but it is July, and we're going to talk about, finally, I think it's very well overdue, some fantasy football. I'm sure everyone leading up to their drafts wants to know what's going on in the first round. Who do you draft in the first round? And more specifically, who are you supposed to take with the first overall pick? So today we're going to dive in to most of the players in the first round and give you guys my thoughts on who I love, don't like, basically just tell you how I think the season's going to go. And before we get into the video, make sure you guys hit that like button, comment down below what you'd like to see next in terms of fantasy content. In terms of the schedule, we're finally getting back on track in terms of videos. The plan is to make around 3 to 4 fantasy videos a week with dropping predictions every Saturday. So obviously this video is Saturday. Starting next week, we're going to do content Monday, Wednesday, Friday for you guys in terms of fantasy, and then start dropping some predictions NFC East, North, South, and so on every Saturday leading up until the season. So if you guys want to check that out, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload. Now on to the rankings, and the rankings we're using are going to be found on Fantasy Pros. You guys can check them out if you want. We're going to be talking about every player in the first round though. And the biggest mistake that people make in the first round is that they take the best player available. Last year I told you guys to stay away from a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who everyone thought was a safe pick, but unfortunately wasn't going to live up to that year prior and that 1,800-yard season. Even if he stayed healthy for most of the season, I don't think he would have had a 2,000-yard season. So fantasy points are all off of volume, right? You want to look at the stats from last year. Also the film. Obviously the film is the most important part. Make sure the player can still run. But all my analyses are made off of judgment from what I think they're going to do this year, what's going to be their ceiling, what's going to be their floor, and the possibility of what's going to happen prior years. So I'll start off with the first overall pick. In terms of what we're looking at right here is Christian McCaffrey. Now, the first overall pick this year looks like it's going to be Justin Jefferson, but in terms of Christian McCaffrey, he should see more volume. I do not like him just off the fact that he got hurt back-to-back years, and I don't want to risk a first-round pick on somebody who can potentially get hurt because he's had injury history. It's just a little bit risky for me. 49ers running backs always get hurt. You look at guys like Raheem Mostert, Elijah Mitchell got hurt. So the likelihood McCaffrey gets hurt is, who knows? Anybody can get injured on this list. Any player, for that matter, can get injured. We're not banking anything off of injuries, but they're also a factor in how you draft, right? McCaffrey, if he doesn't get hurt, the ceiling, the sky is the limit for him. I'm personally staying away. You got Elijah Mitchell also coming back into that offense. I think he's going to be a little bit of a factor, but the Niners also have a lot of firepower. Deebo Samuel in the backfield, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and two running backs, McCaffrey and Mitchell. So McCaffrey, safe first pick. For RB1, it's tough to say if you're going to take him or not. I'm personally not the biggest fan. Again, not the worst pick, but I feel like there's safer options if you understand what I'm saying. I would expect McCaffrey's numbers to dip a little bit from last year, but let's dive into the second player now in Austin Ekeler. I wasn't the biggest fan of Ekeler, but when you add the receiving role of what he's capable of, the guy is unbelievable. Finished as the RB1 last year. Don't know why he's going worse than the RB1 or the first overall pick. I think Ekeler should be the consensus guy, but there are question marks with his contract. Will he sit out? The Chargers brought in Quinn Johnson. They brought in Kellen Moore. Are they going to throw the ball more? What is Eckler's role going to be? I don't think it's going to change very much, but a guy who's pretty damn safe for the first round. I think he can definitely finish in the top 5. Ekeler definitely has a chance to finish back-to-back years on top as the RB1. Now, moving on to the third player in Bijan Robinson, a rookie who's been going at the top of draft boards, at least in the first round. I've seen maybe at the end of the first round, and he's a very talented running back, 8th overall pick for the Falcons, and the Falcons are a very run-heavy offense. They're going to give it to Bijan 15 to 20 times a game. I'm not too worried about Algier and Patterson cutting into the carries like everyone else. He's being a little bit overhyped. I wouldn't say he's a bad pick. Very safe pick for the first round. He's going to be your typical Derrick Henry. Get 1,400 yards rushing, 10 to 12, maybe even 15 touchdowns, just because the Falcons run the ball so much and they don't really rely on their quarterback. But the volume's there for Bijan. The big thing that I don't like about Bijan Robinson is not anything to do with him, obviously, but the Falcons do not throw the ball to the running back out of the backfield. They're not known for it. Arthur Smith has coached Derrick Henry before. They are a run team. They do not throw to the running back. And if they do throw, maybe a little play action to Drake London, Kyle Pitts. We don't know how that offense is going to operate. Quarterback Desmond Ridder is still unproven, so we don't know how that offense is going to operate, but Bijan is definitely going to get the rock. So he's a very safe pick. He should finish in the top 10, but again, that ceiling is going to be limited on those catches, and he's going to be his volume is mainly going to rely off of touchdowns. And that yardage, 1,500 yards, that's a little bit high for a rookie who's an 8th overall pick, but I think he has a solid year, at least 1,250 yards rushing. I predict for Bijan. I said my prediction for Bijan was 315 carries, around 1,400 yards, 4.5 yards a carry, and 10 rushing touchdowns. I think that's pretty fair. I have him ranked as, the RB7, RB8. I don't think it's a bad ranking. Bijan's a safe pick. But at the same time, I'm a little unsure because he's a rookie. Yes, he's going to do very well. But there's other guys that I think have higher ceilings in terms of running backs. Still a great pick for the first round, though. Moving on to Jonathan Taylor now at the 4th pick. A lot of people are skeptical to draft him this year after what happened last year. He got injured, but I believe he can definitely come back from this injury. You got a new offense there. You got Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson. A lot of people think Anthony Richardson's going to be a factor right away. I think he is really not ready to play right now. I think Minshew should start the season. Really wouldn't be surprised if Richardson took over after a week or two, or if he even started the season. But Jonathan Taylor should see the volume, right? Assuming he stays healthy. Obviously, the ankle was a problem last year. JT is going to get what he was on track for in 2022. So I think he's around 1,500 yards, and he's definitely going to finish as a top 10 running back. Maybe a little bit of a reach for a first round, but definitely an easy second round pick. He's, I think, a solid RB1. Some people are concerned about the injuries. And what was my prediction for JT? Jonathan Taylor, I said he'd have around 290 attempts, 12 touchdowns, 1,500 yards, and not much work in the receiving role, but he doesn't normally have much work in the receiving role. Touchdowns may go down depending on if Anthony Richardson is used, but we'll see what happens. I think JT definitely has a high ceiling. We saw what he was able to do that year before last year in 2021. I do like JT as an RB1 pick at the end of the first round, definitely a safe running back. Again, a little bit of question marks with the offense and Anthony Richardson. He may be right directly at his ADP. I don't think he outperforms it, but I definitely think he's a top 5 to top 10 back, depending on the volume he gets in terms of carries, attempts. Again, we don't know how that offense is going to operate. New coach. So, moving on to my favorite pick in Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, I think, has the potential to finish this season as an RB1, right? Finally, no Kareem Hunt. He had the most attempts in his career last year at, I believe, 307. 302 attempts, 1,500 yards, and 12 touchdowns last year. Now Kareem Hunt is gone. Some of those targets can start to open up, and we could see Nick Chubb have around 60 targets this season and maybe catch around 30, 40, even maybe not 50. But I think he's in that range to where he can finish as a top 5 back. I have him as my RB1 in terms of volume. This guy is off the charts. Chubb is one of the best running backs in the league. He's averaging over 5 yards a carry on his career. The only thing I'd be worried about, and I hate to say this, is injury. A lot of running backs get injured, especially coming off of a pinnacle season. And he's now entering his 6th year. He just had his most carries in a season, his most yards in a season, and tied for his most touchdowns in a season. Not saying, again, anyone can get injured, but just looking at fantasy and how people hit their strides on a down year, contract year, and they usually have a setback once they're at the top of their game. And obviously there's exceptions like Devontae Adams and Mike Evans just having consistent 1,000-yard seasons and 100 catches for Devontae at least. But there is always that risk of injury for any player. And Nick Chubb, I just see a little bit more than others. The guy's training so hard in the weight room. He's benching like 600 pounds. I'm sorry, squatting like 600 pounds. So Nick Chubb is a bulldozer. He's definitely going to run over a lot of guys. But if he doesn't get hurt, definitely possible finish as an RB1 this year. I love him. There's always a possible injury concern with any player. So it's hard to draft the right player, right? Last year, I drafted Javonte Williams thinking he was going to be a monster, a star, top 10 running back, and unfortunately tore his ACL. So you can't predict injuries, but you can anticipate them, as stupid as that sounds, but you have to think of every possibility in terms of fantasy. You don't want to screw up this first round pick. That's why most people are taking receivers in terms of Jefferson, Chase, a lot of safe picks. But there's also a limited amount of running backs, so you got to be careful with who you pick in the first round. Next player up, Derrick Henry. Now, a lot of people have mixed feelings on Henry. I'm a big fan of him. I know a lot of people are like, the wheels are going to fall off for Henry. And yes, there is a time where he can definitely, backtrack in terms of carries. And when you pull up the stat sheet for Henry, he's coming off his second most carries in his career. 349 carries, 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns. 4.5 yards a carry, not bad. But again, how long can this guy keep it up? King Henry has been awesome for so many years. When is it the year he's going to fall off or break down? I think he's going to be fine again this year, at least in a 1,000-yard season coming up. 10 touchdowns, easy. I'd say he's a very safe first-round pick. A lot of people are skeptical. I'd say draft him if you're unsure of any other running backs. He should definitely be a quick, safe pick. Some people concerned about the receiving upside, but when you look at Henry and his receiving career, he saw the most targets in his career last year at 41, caught 33 passes for almost 400 yards. No touchdowns. And there is a little bit of a skeptic in me because they did draft Tajay Spears in the third round. But in terms of Henry, he's still the king for me. I don't see him taking any step back. Obviously, he had that foot injury in 2021, but I still think he keeps rolling. I don't know if he matches the season he had last year in terms of 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, but something around that 1,400-yard season and 10 touchdowns with maybe the same receiving season. We'll see what happens, but I like Derrick Henry. I don't think he's a bad pick by any means. All right, I'm going to make this one quick. Saquon Barkley, I just realized we kind of skipped over a few just because of PPR. But Saquon is a guy who is going to do the same thing he did last year. He should be the focal point in the Giants' offense. But the only question marks that I have is that he does sit out for a contract extension. He does deserve it. No running back's going to want to play without getting paid their money because they're risking injury. So there's a possibility Saquon can definitely hold out. I wouldn't draft him until any contract issues are cleaned up. But still a guy who, when healthy, produces and is a very good running back. I told you to draft him last year. Everyone's like, no, he's injured. Everyone's due for a bounce back year every now and then. Moving on to Justin Jefferson, the consensus first overall pick. Now, Jefferson is a guy who definitely deserves to be at the top. Look at his last season. He's coming off a great year. Over 180 targets. That's unbelievable, right? Top receiver last year. And I predicted that. I said Jefferson was going to be the wide receiver one last year. It happened. The guy's a monster. But the thing that I'm worried about this year is now that Adam Thielen's gone, you're bringing in a rookie for Jordan Addison. Is that going to take enough pressure, enough eyes away from Jefferson? I still think a lot of teams are going to double Jefferson, and there's no doubt he could definitely take on a double team. Pretty much for the whole game. I don't see what the problem is there. I believe Hawkinson is a guy who can definitely take off pressure. You don't have that heavy run game to lean on. Madison is not bad, but Dalvin Cook was your good running back. Not that he's not good, but that was your big part of your offense last year was your run game. Now you kind of downgrade to Madison, a slight downgrade, but still, Madison's not as good as Cook. So you don't have that same explosiveness in the backfield. You lost a veteran receiver who had a decent amount of targets last year. And then is Hawkinson going to be your red zone threat? I think Addison can take a big step up. Obviously, you got KJ Osborne in the slot. The Vikings are going to be a decent offense. I just don't know if Jefferson can match what he did last year. I think he does around the same numbers. He's a very safe pick for the first round. Again, don't want to say it, but anyone can get injured. He's had the most consistent season start to the season or start to the league that I have seen in a while. So when you look at last year, 184 targets, 1,800 yards, 8 touchdowns. I mean, he's going to have a similar season to what he did last year. Maybe 130 catches, 17. Maybe not that high, but I would say at least 1,500 yards, 8 to 10 touchdowns. No doubt. On to the first tight end in Travis Kelce. I like Kelce a lot. Last year, Kelce outscored the tight end 2 by almost 100 points. So I believe he could do that again this year. The Chiefs offense, again, they did not bring in another receiver. They brought in, young rookies, not rookies, but they're young receivers. So you got Sky Moore, Justin Watson. There's not many other guys to name. Justin Ross. There's a bunch of young guys in the receiving corps, and Kelce's the guy that's the only guy that I think Mahomes trusts to take the pressure off of him. Obviously, other guys are going to get targets. They can be sleepers in the later rounds, but a lot of people are questioning how long is Kelce going to keep this up for? Travis Kelce is, if you can secure him, the easy pick in the first round in terms of mid-first round. Grab him as your tight end 1. You'll be that much further ahead of your teammates. The guy's going to score 15. He's going to average 15 to 20 points a game at the tight end position. And then you secure that with the duo, maybe with Mahomes in the second round. That would be unbelievable. But, I mean, that's if you want to go that route. And you don't want to take a running back for the first 2 rounds. Again, everything in fantasy revolves around the first round and what you pick. If it's a tight end, running back, quarterback, whatever the case may be. But I believe Kelce's going to be a monster this year. The Chiefs just didn't bring in anyone, and I think Kelce's just that guy who's consistent and Mahomes can rely on. Now, Ja'Marr Chase is listed at number 8, and I'm pretty sure I talked about 9 guys, but we're just going to go through them all. And Chase is a guy who only played in 12 games last year, I believe. So Chase played in 12 games last year, saw an increased role from his rookie season, and he played 5 less games, I'm sorry. I love the ceiling for Ja'Marr Chase. Look at his numbers from his rookie to his sophomore season. Yes, he got hurt, but again, if you draft him, I mean, the ceiling is so high for this guy. He had 9 touchdowns in 12 games. In 5 more games, definitely could have hit 15 touchdowns. So that's a little ridiculous to say, but Joe Burrow targets Ja'Marr Chase a lot. In the 12 games that he played, in the 17 games that Higgins played, or how many ever games he played, Chase still led the receiving corps in targets and played only 12 games. So I can only imagine what the Burrow to Chase connection is going to be. I think Chase's ceiling is really high. Definitely close numbers to his rookie season in terms of yardage, and expect those touchdowns to go up. It's hard to say because it's a first-round pick. It's an easy, safe pick. Love Ja'Marr Chase. I think he's going to be really awesome this year. On to number 9 in Tony Pollard. Now, Pollard is not a guy who I'm a big fan of. And the reason I don't like Pollard is because he's taking over as the full-down workhorse back. He's been a backup to Zeke Elliott for a while now, and the Cowboys are finally giving him his shot, which I like. But when you look at these carries, he's been going up significantly every year. But he's not going to be able to maintain 5 yards a carry. He's a good running back, great elusive guy. He can run between the tackles occasionally, but he's a speedster. He's not known to be a bulldozer. And if he does have over 260 attempts next year, I just really am worried of him not being able to take on that big work. I mean, he's not a bruiser. Are you going to really give Tony Pollard that many attempts? Or is because Kellen Moore is gone, are you going to change up that offense? It's a little bit of a confusing situation for me. They also brought in a rookie, Deuce Vaughn. I don't know how much of a role he's going to play, but I'm not the biggest fan of Tony Pollard as everyone else is. Potential top 10 finish if he stays on track. I don't think he has nearly the same amount of yards per carry, but not a bad pick. I'm just personally staying away just because I don't believe he could take on this full workload. Again, not a bad running back. Guy's a quick, speedy guy running between tacklers. Just not a bruiser. Like I said, not a goal line guy. And who knows what the Cowboys offense is going to, who knows? We know what Mike McCarthy wants to do in terms of push the ball down the field. But how are they going to use Tony Pollard? Plus, people do forget he's coming off an injury from last year's playoffs and his ankle injury. So another thing to keep an eye on. I do not trust him, unfortunately. 11 in Cooper Kupp. I think this is the last guy we'll do for this episode. I know Tyreek Hill's a fringe first-round pick, but in terms of the tier 1 and tier 2 players, Cooper Kupp will be the last guy to talk about. Now, Kupp, I believe, is going to finish as the wide receiver 1. You look at that season he had in 2021, and he was on pace for that again in 2022, averaging 20 fantasy points a game, over that actually. And if he kept that, he was on pace for a 380-point season, which is very possible he could do that again. So, I like Cooper Kupp a lot this year. He was on pace for around the same targets he had in 2021 at around 181 targets. So, a little less than he had in 2021, but still a solid. He only played 9 games in 2022, and the guy still finished near the top. So, you love Cooper Kupp if he stays healthy. Even with Matthew Stafford getting older, people have concerns about the Rams offense. With Sean McVay there, with Cooper Kupp there, with Matthew Stafford there, I am not worried. The rapport is there with Kupp and Stafford, and Kupp's going to be a monster in 2023. I would expect a similar season to 2021, maybe a slight down year, obviously, from that monstrous Triple Crown season that he had, but I would say around 130 catches for 1,700 yards and 10 to 12 touchdowns. That's what Cooper Kupp does. And, he didn't really explode until 2021. He was always that slot receiver, 1,000-yard guy. Look at the stats, 2019, 2020. I loved Kupp. And then once Robert Woods got hurt and then Kupp slowly took over as the number 1 option there, that was where Kupp started to thrive. And when you look at the Rams offense, there are no other targets outside of Cooper Kupp. The only thing the Rams should be getting going is that run game and Cam Akers, which I'll talk about in another sleeper video. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on every player in the first round. Let me know if you want me to do this again, if you want me to do second round, third round. I will do it. Just let me know in the comments. We're going to start doing fantasy content 3 to 4 times a week. Fantasy season's here, and I can't wait for the season. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next video.